My name is Chris Medikevich, and I'm playing Elves today. Yeah, so the main game plan behind Elves is that it's a creature combo deck based on Glimpse of Nature and the Nettle Sentinel Heritage Druid interaction. Essentially, the idea is to get a little bit of mana out and Nettle Sentinel and Heritage Druid, the mana engine of the deck, and to get a Glimpse of Nature going and cycle player creatures, which will trigger Glimpse and let you draw your entire deck pretty much. The backup plan to that, or I guess the alternate combo kill, is the natural order into Craterhoof Behemoth for the majority of decks, or natural order into Archon of Valor's Reach, which will shut down any combo decks from the other side of the table. The other things that this deck is doing today is I'm playing 2 Once Upon a Times. There are some lists out there that play Once Upon a Time or don't. I highly recommend it. It really solves the mulligan issues for this deck. I'm only playing 2 today, but 2 to 3 is probably where you want to be, the ideal sweet spot. The deck has some issues mulliganing, and you can kind of get into this mulliganing vortex, if you will, if you don't find lands for your opening salvo of spells. So Once Upon a Time definitely helps with that, and it also gets around some of the incidental hate people tend to bring in for the deck. The matchups today went pretty well. So if I could tweak anything about the deck, the only thing I think I'm looking to tweak would probably be the amount of Once Upon a Times that I'm playing main. I'd want to try maybe like going up to 3 instead of just 2. The card's great, especially in your opener. And like I said before, it solves a lot of the mulliganing problems the deck has, and kind of adding a 3rd really just puts it at peak consistency for your openers. Yeah, so I'd really recommend this deck for someone who really likes intricate gameplay and kind of a mix between combo-centric plays and incremental value. If you like things like Storm to some degree, or if you like things like creature combo such as Heliod in Modern, or something along those lines, or if you just play Elves in another format, I would highly recommend trying this deck. It's very intricate, and there are a lot of things to learn and pick up, but once you get that down, I think you'll start having a lot of fun.
Spencer Warburton here, and I played Jeskai / 4-color Control. So the main game plan of this deck is to get far enough ahead of your opponent with good old Ragavan here. And this strategy is backed up by the counterspell Daze, along with Force of Negation and Force of Will. And that is mainly the early game, and the deck sort of camouflages itself. It's mainly a control deck, but you can start with fast draws with Ragavan and kind of play this tempo style deck. And then this is backed up by very good removal spells like Swords to Plowshares, Prismatic Ending, and with the whole cantrip package of blue. This deck has a lot of spice. Let's start with the main board Blood Moon with 4 colors in my deck. So the main board has only 3 colors. The sideboard has 2 Veil of Summers. So I wanted to hedge against the Urza Saga decks along with the Eldrazi Post decks, and along with the Uro package decks, with play a lot of dual lands and a lot of non-basic lands. So I'm running 7 basics. I run 1 plains, 1 plains and 5 islands, 6 basics, and 8 fetch lands so you can find your basics. And with the whole cantrip package, you really get to use your basics to the best of their ability. And as well as 2 Monastery Mentors. And this card is very powerful because the deck is centrally based around 1 mana removal, cantrips, and free cast counterspells. So when you're able to just play this and tap out and have a multitude of 9 free counterspells, you can really just get far ahead in the game. Some of the tweaks I would make to this deck would definitely be cutting the green for Veil of Summer in the sideboard, and that would allow me to cut the Tropical Island in the main, which is the only green source, along with treasures, of course. And maybe go up an island or another white fetch I was thinking, or maybe the second Mystic Sanctuary, because that came in handy today. It lets you get back key Brainstorms, or it can let you Terminus again. I would mainly recommend this deck to players who are absolute crazy, because there's a very weird way of playing this deck where you have to kind of trick and mind game your opponent into making them have a sense of security, I would say, because you fetch your basics and with a duel here and there, and then just play a Blood Moon, and people get so caught off guard because you're a 3 to 4 color deck, and then you just kind of get some wins off of that. And I mean, if you like to just draw cards and counterspell people to the end of the night, you know, this is probably your deck. So.
My name is Dylan Carr. I'm here playing lands today. The main game plan for lands is to basically remove all your counters off from Dark Depths here, which comes in with ice counters, and the best way to remove it is then is copying it with Thessian Stage. And since Thessian Stage is already in play, it doesn't get the counters, and then since it is Dark Depths, it comes in and makes a token, Merit Lage, which is a 20/20 indestructible, which is exactly equal what your starting life total is to perfectly murder your opponent. This is mostly a pretty still stock list. The only spicy thing that I changed up was instead of running 2 Taigas, I have 1 Stomping Grounds, which is easier to trigger your Field of the Dead a little bit. And in my sideboard, I ran with the Companion, Kahira, because of game 1 it doesn't do much, but games 2 and 3 it is a good target to pitch for Endurance and Force of Vigor. So having a Companion that really doesn't matter to you, that's easy to pitch to these cards that can have huge impacts, is really worth it. It ran pretty well today. Again, this is the first tournament I actually got to run Tabernacle. I felt like every time that came into play against a creature heavy deck, it put in a lot of work, but it does have a hefty price tag of anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 depending on condition and language. So that was a cool addition I got to play with today, and it made the deck feel a lot better, but it is an expensive card. I think the name of the deck is Lands, because all you do is play lands and your lands feel like powerful spells. Again, like here, Tabernacle does so much work as it being a land. All your lands feel like spells, and so if you like having powerful lands, it's probably the deck for you.
My name is Jake Romansky, and I played lands today. I have only a couple different strategies to win. One strategy is to use Thessian Stage Dark Depths to make a 20/20 Merit Lage. The other way that this deck wins is just from Mana Denial. It has Wastelands and 1 Ghost Quarter, and it utilizes Life in the Loam to buy back those lands to just continue to take my opponent off of mana so that I can develop a game plan. And then with the recent printing of Urza's Saga, I can also make constructs, but those are the main ways that the deck wins. As far as spice is concerned, I mean, I am playing Retro in the main, the Retrofitter Foundry in the main. A lot of lists are not playing that in the main. They're playing Needle instead, but with the recent matches that I've been playing, I've been siding out Needle, so I swapped those. So I have Needle in the sideboard now and Retrofitter in the main. I think everything else, though, is fairly stock. I'm playing 1 Sylvan Library and 4 Valakut's. And there's a little bit of discrepancies with how many of those to play, but I like having something to do every turn. So I'm playing the full list for the most part. So I actually recently played in the Legacy Pit 20K with this almost exact deck, and I found that really the only changes that I made from that event was the sideboard. The main list is stock. I've not changed the main list whatsoever. I did have 2 chokes in the sideboard, and I replaced them with 2 Pyroblasts. So now I have 4 blasts total in the sideboard, mainly just for, there's a lot of blue running around, and I like to have counters to that, and Storm is a really bad matchup, notoriously, for the lands deck in general. And a lot of Storm decks now are playing Echo Vaons, and it's a really good way to pull ahead if they crack an LED, and then they echo and you blast it. So I wanted to have more blasts in my sideboard. I'm doing the 2-2 split also to play around Surgical Extraction. But that's pretty much it. I don't think I would change this list. If you like the mana denial strategy of Magic the Gathering, this deck can definitely do that with its recursion of Wastelands and Ghost Quarters and ports, however many ports you want to play. The deck is fairly complicated because this deck plays 30 plus lands in it. And with the crop rotation and the expedition map, you have to constantly ask yourself what is the best land to get for the certain matchup. So I would not recommend this for someone who just recently picked the deck up, even though I recently picked the deck up about 2 months ago. I jammed about 40 leagues on Magic Online with it to get really good with it, but you have to know every card that's in the deck in order to fetch up, with crop rotation or expedition map. So. Yeah, if you like mana denial and you like the 2020 flying indestructible aspect of this deck, I think you'll have a great time with it.
I'm John Goss, and I guess you could call it 5-color artifacts. So the main game plan of my deck is to just get value. More and more cards, more and more positive interactions on my side. So the spiciest part of my deck is that it's playing 5 colors. In general, it has no duels, it has no brainstorm, it hurts me physically to register that for a tournament, but being able to play these overwhelming cards like, things like Thought Monitor or Baleful Strix, and then recast them with cards like Emery, is just incredibly backbreaking in any kind of grindy matchup. This very strange thing is actually playing Ragavan and playing all these extra colors. So being able to play things like Portable Hole, Ragavan, Meddling Mages out of the sideboard, and the one of, once you already get 4 colors, the 5th one's free, you get 1 choke out of the sideboard too. So it ends up being a lot more positive to what the deck's trying to do. Yeah, so the tweaks I would make to this, I would say I've thoroughly enjoyed the Ragavans. I think you can play a more conservative version that just plays 3 colors with Esper Sentinel. I've been incredibly happy with the list. I think that maybe you want to take out the Shadow Spear, play something else in these bullet packages, maybe like an Aether Spellbomb or something. But for me, I've been incredibly happy with how it's been playing out. It's all the most powerful cards that Modern has had, and just you're playing them in Legacy, right? So if you have Modern cards, things like Ragavans and Urza Sagas, it's not a really big leap to pick up Mox Opals and pick up these other things compared to dual lands. Yeah, you gotta pick up Force of Wills, but those are good entry cards on any way to Legacy. And in total, this deck is like $1,500 or something like that compared to all the dual lands and everything you need for all these other decks. So I think it is incredibly interesting, incredibly complex decisions. It's very unexpected, at least right now, and it's pretty cheap. So that's who I'd recommend it to.
Hi, I'm Michael Mapson, one of the hosts of the Dark Depths podcast, and this is what I played today, the Blue-Red Saga Von deck. The main game plan of my deck is to just kind of generally be a Blue-Red tempo deck. It's very reminiscent of the Blue-Red Delver deck that people are playing. You have a lot of the same threats in Ragavan and Murktide. Notably, you're missing Dragon's Rage Channeler. But other than that, you play the same suite of cantrips, the same counter spells, the same removal. But the big difference is instead of really playing 4 Wastelands, you're playing 4 Urza Sagas, and then you have these targets. And so the Urza Sagas just give you additional threats and a little bit of like, you know, a little bit of a toolbox, some resiliency against control decks. And like you're still able to play 2 Wastelands, but you're really more focused on like just kind of generating value. The Wastelands are really more so to answer problematic cards such as opposing Urza Sagas. They're not necessarily there to keep your opponent from doing things. I am not sure what changes I would make going forward. To be honest, I haven't been on the deck for very long. Isaac, who's known as Bullwinkle, I want to say 6705, has been crushing with this deck consistently on Magic Online. If you were interested in changes to the deck going forward, I would definitely just look up their results. They probably will have better answers than whatever I say. But if they cut, if you see them playing 3 Days and 3 Ragavan, don't do that. They're also a major troll. So like, don't do that. Those cards are really good. I'd recommend this deck to anybody who likes playing tempo decks, especially if you're struggling against the Bant builds. Because it goes a little bit bigger, it's able to contend with like the endurance stuff a little bit better. I played some games against Uro and like, it was like I didn't actually have any problem beating Uro, which is kind of insane to say out of a tempo deck. So anybody who's just a fan of that and like drawing lots of cards, I drew so many cards. So if you want to draw cards and kind of grind people out and just like win off the back of your monkey, I would play this deck and play it quick before something gets banned.
Hello, my name is Billy Mitchell, and I am playing Blue-Red Delver. The main game plan with my deck is to play small creatures, namely Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer, Dragon Rage Channeler, and sometimes at this point we still play Delver Secrets. Play them early and protect them with threats in Counterspell. Things like Daze and Force of Will do a really good job protecting, especially in this format that is kind of dependent on sorcery speed threats, or trying to get them off the board as quickly as possible, right? Something like Daze is able to tax a lot of those 1-mana spells pretty effectively. And you still have removal in the form of Gut Shot and Lightning Bolt in order to clear the way. You also are able to recoup a lot of cards really well with Expressive Iteration, which is obviously a huge card coming out of Strixhaven. It's a big 2-for-1 for 2 mana and refills your hand so you can keep playing threats into the mid and late game. The spiciest part of my deck, I would probably have to say, is the 2 copies of Gutshot in the main deck. They seem kind of awkward, but it works really well with Dragon Rage Channeler, able to trigger its ability pretty effectively for 0 mana. And also, because turn 1 is such a critical turn, you can play a land, pay 2 life, and that way you can play around things like Daze really effectively. If I could tweak one thing about the deck going forward, I'm not sure I necessarily need the Karakas I have in the sideboard. It is definitely effective in dealing with things like Ragavan, but I think in this metagame, I have enough things already interacting between the Lightning Bolts and the Gut Shots. I don't necessarily need to deal with it in that way. A second basic island or maybe the second Steam Vents would allow me to be less dependent on my other sources of mana and have to, this Karakas, which doesn't tap for anything that I care about, will lead to less issues with my mana going forward. I would recommend this deck to anyone who's really intimately knows the format and understands how to shift gears, because this deck looks on its face to be an aggro deck, but it pivots into the role of control and to mid-range really effectively, especially post-board. And if you are comfortable with this format and want a deck that gives you the most amount of control over your games, this is probably the deck you should be playing.